I'm going to play for you a video that explains President Joe Biden's power regarding the student debt crisis and what he can actually do to fix it.
I'm going to talk about one simple question. Is it legal for President Biden to cancel student debt? The answer is yes. He can do it today without any other action by Congress. Let me explain why. Imagine you lend me $20. It's your $20. You can ask me to pay it back in full, in half, or not at all. Student debt cancellation works the same way. When someone takes out a federal student loan, they're borrowing money from the government, and the Constitution gives Congress the authority to control property of the government, such as debts owed to it. When Congress gave the Secretary of Education the authority to make or back student loans, it also gave the Secretary the broad and unrestricted power to cancel or write down that debt. This power was established under the Higher Education Act in 1965. That law gives the Secretary of Education the authority to compromise, waive, or release any right, title, claim, lien, or demand, however acquired. The Secretary also has the authority not simply to compromise debt, but to modify a student loan to zero. Secretary Betsy DeVos actually used this authority to cancel out a limited amount of student debt. Now, it's important to understand the purpose of the Higher Education Act. It was to make the benefits of higher education widely available, especially to those who otherwise couldn't afford it. Nobody else but the federal government was willing to lend to people with no credit history, no means, and only the chance at a bright future. But we decided to do it because education is so important to us as individuals and as a country. But the intent was not what we're seeing now. Worsening the racial wealth gap, driving up costs, reducing affordability and access, and triggering a repayment crisis. The nation today has a $1.7 trillion student debt burden owed to the federal government by about 43 million Americans. At the Project on Predatory Student Lending, we represent over 1 million student borrowers who were cheated by for-profit colleges. And this is an industry that aggressively targets and scams people who are looking for jobs and careers in order to get its hands on federal student loan dollars. Their priority is enrollment, not education. We see how defaulting on student debt can cause poor credit, food insecurity, homelessness, inability to pay household debt, barriers to employment, and mental and physical health issues. It holds people back in their decisions to get married and have children, or to do certain kinds of jobs that we as a country need doing. And this burden impacts the whole family, the whole community, the whole economy, not just the loan bearer. But we've also seen how debt cancellation can liberate Americans and their families. And with the COVID-19 pandemic, the government has paused federal student loan payments through September 2021. This has freed up households in this pandemic to spend money and help keep our economy going. And the ability to do that falls under the same authority to modify or outright cancel debts. In these examples and others, the law is clear. President Biden has the legal authority to cancel student debt. And doing so is not an end, but a beginning of necessary change we need to invest in higher education in a different way, so that millions more Americans are not cheated out of their futures and saddled with student debt that they can never repay.
Now, that was a very, very informative video, really good video. And I came across this video after I made my previous video about student debt cancellation and Biden's supposed plan towards student debt. So let's get into this. Biden's plan, it doesn't go anywhere near far enough. But the point is, I think that this is an issue that he can be pushed on. I think that if the left gets organized and the progressives come together and the people that really care about these things and this particular issue get together, they can kind of swarm and push him in the direction that he needs to be on this issue. Now, Biden's Secretary of Education is a man named Miguel Cardona. I don't know much about this character, but what I want to do is I want to review a tweet that Biden tweeted out on December the 23rd, 2020. He says, "In the 21st century, 12 years of school isn't enough. That's why under the Biden-Harris plan, community college will be free and public colleges and universities will be tuition free for families earning less than $125,000 a year." He tweeted this. This is actually really good. I really like this. This is really good. Okay, of course, people can argue, well, all higher education should be free. K through 12 is free. Why isn't this free? I get all that, but this is actually a really good plan, and I'll take it. You know what I'm saying? But when has he ever talked about this? They never talk about this. It's as if they don't actually believe in it. But the point is that I think that this is an issue that he can be pushed on, and it's an issue that needs to be handled and handled correctly. No one can live a prosperous life if they're saddled with debt. As you saw in that video, she talked about how the Constitution gives Congress the authority to control property of the government, aka debts, among other things. But we're talking about debt here. And the Higher Education Act of 1965 gives the Secretary of Education numerous abilities to handle this situation as well. And so they have the power to do this. Don't let anybody tell you, because in my last video that I made, I talked about how Biden's press secretary said that he wouldn't do it through executive order, that he would try to get $10,000. That's it, just $10,000 worth of student loan payments gone from every American, not even through executive order, through Congress. He would try to do it through Congress. It's not, I mean, he has the power to do this, guys. Through executive order, the president can wipe out all student loan debt. And there aren't any good faith arguments, any correct arguments against this. There really aren't. You know, the thing that people like to fall back on the most is, well, it's unfair. You know, I had to pay off my student debt, so why don't these people? Okay, let me put this into perspective for you. Back in the day, in the mid 19th century, when slavery was abolished, what if the people that were slaves said, hey, no, don't end slavery. We were slaves, so other black people should be slaves. They should suffer the same way that we did. Now you might say, oh, Maliek, that's a radical comparison. Well, not really. The premise is the same. You want other people to suffer the same way that you did. Why? On the merit of it, as a matter of principle, you should want people after you to live better, more prosperous lives. That's what you should do. And on the subject on the subject of slavery, these people are slaves to debt. Maybe not in the literal sense, but they're slaves to debt. They can't live a prosperous life being debt-ridden the way that they are. So I think that this is an issue that he can be pushed on. He should be pushed on. And it's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take a lot of pressure. We're going to have to shame these people into doing it, because they're not going to do it willingly. They're definitely not going to do it willingly. 43 million people, $1.7 trillion in debt. This problem can persist, and hopefully it won't.